I'm Councillor Mary Kouros, representing North Ward.
And I'm Councillor Henry Davis from the South Ward, and we're both elected council members of the City of Adelaide.
Adelaide City Talks is your window into the City of Adelaide and all the things that make our city great, and that keeps it that way.
Now, we don't always agree on everything.
And our views are our own.
But we don't hold back or skirt around the big issues.
Because this is our city.
And it's your city.
And there's a lot to talk about.
So join us for Adelaide City Talks.
It's been a while since our last podcast, but thank you very much for joining us again. Today we'll be talking about what's been happening in the last month. Now, we're over the main budget period. We've approved the budget and gone out to consultation and approved it. And now we're starting to deal with the long-term financial plan. So I'm joined with Mary, of course, our beloved co-host. How are you, Mary?
I'm really good, Henry, really good. It's been a lot of heated discussions over this long-term financial plan, hasn't it?
Not really, because I just get kicked out, or they're not letting me ask questions and things like that, which I find really frustrating.
Well, this is what I want to do on this today.
In this special episode.
I actually want to talk about this with you because there's a lot of things that you want to say, a lot of points that you want to make, but every time you're making a point, you either get shut down, you either get a Regulation 29 thrown at you, or the motion is asked to be put so that no one can actually talk to it, which in other words, you're being gagged from actually pointing out the concerns for the long-term financial plan. Some points you have are really valid. So I just want to flesh that out with you. And also, it's also really difficult for people to understand what the long-term financial plans means to the ratepayer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over the long term. So let's start with your concerns.
Well, yeah. So I guess one of the main frustrations I have, and I think the motivation behind them shutting me down and not letting me talk to these issues, is because there's potentially this by-election that's still looming over the City of Adelaide 2 years on. So I want to be talking about a really bad situation, a really, really dangerous financial situation that we're in as a result of all these great announcements that everyone's put out. So the issue that the councillors have, my biggest gripe with this dominant faction of what they're doing, I'm going to call them the woke faction from now on. The biggest issue that they're having is they want to put out all the good news. But you know what? There's a whole bunch of bad news that comes with that. Someone's got to pay for it. Nothing's for free. And I feel like what they want to do is tell everyone how good everything is and then not talk about the consequences, not talk about the cost. And it's really hard when I can't even ask a question. I can't even get through a 3-minute speech, let alone talk about $375 million in debt. So yes, happy to jump into it.
Okay, so let's set the picture. So the last 2 years we've had two budgets with you and I both, for our different reasons, which we've talked about repeatedly in the last 2 years on our podcast, voted against the budgets.
Yes.
We could see that this was heading into dire circumstances.
What I can't believe is just the flat out denial of it. It's just a flat out. I was on a residents meeting on Monday night, and I said, we're currently budgeting for $375 million in debt. Councillor Snape's just like, no, that's not true. I'm like, what do you mean it's not true? It's in the document.
Is it denial or the fact that he doesn't understand?
Well, it's just flat out, no, that's just not true because that doesn't seem right. But if you read your council papers, it's there.
I know, which is what's scary because people are getting... they're relying on the elected members to get their information, and when the information is obscured, or there's a lot of what do you call it? Mirrors and
smoke and mirrors.
That's it. It creates a lot of confusion, and so the last 2 years, as I said, we've talked about the budget. They've agreed to a lot of spending. We're upgrading our main streets. We're, spending a lot of money on our renewals.
There's climate change.
We are spending a lot of money on EV chargers. Yep. We're spending money on heritage. We're spending money on, what other initiatives I can't come into my mind, but a lot of really worthy stuff.
That's right.
Really, really stuff that we really need to think about. But can we afford them? But it hadn't been that conversation about how we're going to get the money. It was more like, yes, let's do it. Let's go spending all this money. And let's talk about, on top of that, upgrading Light Square, and let's do a master plan. And let's do a master plan.
How much is that going to cost? Oh no, we're not going to answer you, Councillor Davis. How dare you?
And let's do a master plan for the east side of the parklands, where there is so much that we are planning, yet we're not taking into account.
And we're spending money doing that.
Oh, $2 million on trees.
Yes, that's right. $20,000 a tree, I think.
Yes.
All worthy causes.
All worthy.
Right, and then my fundamental issue is, and then the spin that comes on top. right? So we heard Mark Siebentreut, who's the chair of the Finance and Governance Committee. He's the one who has been refusing to allow me to ask questions. Last night, the new way of spinning this on Tuesday was it's COVID. It's COVID's fault. Everyone knows that it's COVID's fault. And they've kind of picked that up from you. That's come out of a distorted and this painstaking, twisted version of, well, you know what, Mary's been saying that, you know, during COVID, there was less delivery on renewals, which was true.
Because no one
well,
could.
now all of the problem is now we're going to agree with Mary because now it's all COVID stuff.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's a homegrown problem because of their failure to properly budget and their failure to properly run the city finances.
But partially, it's COVID's fault. Not partially. Let's talk about this in the sense of you've had a city that
you had the excuse of COVID because people were locked inside.
Yes.
And people couldn't actually go and do these things.
We couldn't actually, that's exactly right. We couldn't go and do all the work that the city was required during that time.
Couldn't meet in public.
We couldn't meet in public. People had to work from home. And
all that.
We had all those restrictions.
You have an excuse.
That's right.
We do not have COVID now.
No.
Okay.
So, but with that, Henry, did bring a sort of a backlog that we needed to get to.
Sure.
Let's be fair. It's not all, all just one side. There is a backlog. However, because of the overspending in other areas.
Well, the problem is this failure to properly address and properly talk about and isolate what that backlog is.
Yeah.
So what they're trying to do is chuck everything in the same melting pot, which is their own homegrown problems and fallout from COVID that we need to recover on. And increase of inflation and a whole bunch of electioneering. So they're trying to put this into a melting pot and trying to extract this out for your average ratepayer in the city of Adelaide is nearly impossible.
Oh, it's really hard. People look at me and and when I talk about renewals and they go, what are you talking about? So let's break that down.
Yes. Okay. So maybe let's put it like this and more of a simplistic way. So our renewals budget in the 25 year, this year, was about 55 million, but on average, it's about $69 million. Okay. So
what's our budget? What's our total?
Let's just say it's $70 million a year.
Okay.
Okay. On renewals.
Yeah.
Now, renewals are basically where an asset has reached the end of its life. It needs to be replaced. And that could be a footpath. It could be a drain. It could be trees, for example, that have, died or whatever, which wouldn't happen that often. Different things like that. So it's not necessarily maintenance, but it's renewals of assets which are degraded that come up for renewal.
Yeah.
Okay. The council is now telling the administration to not properly maintain the city. And rather than properly maintain it, they're going to let the city degrade over time. Now, the cost to actually maintain the city to the level that it needs to be of 100% renewals when something reaches the end of its life and it's now broken to replace that asset, we need to get that up to 100%, in my view, which is probably going to maintain it. But that's going to require a 10.5% rate increase. Now, over the last 2 years, this council hasn't properly dealt with this issue. And so this rate increase just gets worse and worse and worse every single year. If we choose to maintain our assets to 100%, as we properly should, but we don't increase the rates, we go into debt. And we pay interest on that debt. If we choose to increase our rates and properly maintain our assets, then we don't go into debt, but maybe the residents are angry. If we choose to not increase our rates and not maintain the assets, then the city goes into a state of disrepair. So the council is voting for the last option to go into a state of disrepair and not properly maintain our assets.
But
Put it this way.
How is that different to what they were planning before to what they're doing? So what is it? What's the lever to do every 4 years, over 4 years? Now that is that right? So
no, it's basically like, okay, let's just say that we have 10 roads.
Yeah.
And those roads will last for 10 years. And we start one road in year one, another road in year two. So over this time, we have this rolling asset that we've built up. Now we have 10 roads. Every single year, we need to renew those roads. Otherwise, they become unusable, essentially, or they get to a point where it starts to become dangerous. We also have these maintenance levels. Okay, so maintenance level 5 might be no potholes whatsoever.
That's right.
Fully functioning, sealed road.
Yeah.
Maintenance level 4 might be like cracks. Maintenance level 3 might be potholes through it. 2 is just
Yeah.
dirt and it's completely degraded, rubble everywhere. And 1 is just unusable kind of thing, completely broken. So the idea is that every 10 years we would resurface one road. What they're now proposing to do is to not resurface them every year, but instead resurface them every 12 or 13 or 14 years, which basically means that the asset is going to degrade at a much faster rate.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, because we're both in the same room, but I believe that they were looking at 8 years, not over 10 years.
No. So I'm just giving an example of 10 roads.
Oh, right, okay.
All right, we build them over. Now we have
Right.
this rolling asset that every
Okay.
year needs to be maintained.
Just don't want to confuse anybody out
Yeah.
there if they hear some other
I know this is quite complicated.
Yeah.
What they're proposing
Trying
to
to break it down.
Yeah. So imagine this. Maybe this is an easier way. Let's just say we have these 10 roads.
Yeah.
And they all need to be replaced one every year. We've done it over time, so we have one road to replace every year. What they're going to do now is set the asset renewal to 90%.
That's right.
Let's just say from now on, instead of replacing the whole road, we're only going to do 90% of that road. Okay? So for every single year,
That's right.
we're only going to do 90% of the renewal. So 10% of that road is just going to be left to degrade and it won't be come back to for another 10 years. So let's just say 10% of that road will degrade so that it becomes unusable.
Which is what I'm trying to say, Henry, is that they want to maintain at this 90% ratio
Yes.
over the 8 years.
So they're
That's
going
what
to
they're
maintain
stretching
it.
Yeah.
So they're only going to maintain 90% of the road
Yes,
over the next 8 years.
that's right.
And then after that,
Then they'll
they'll start to maintain the whole road.
Yes, at 100%.
Yes.
It's
So
the
it's
ratio
basically-
that we're talking about
Yeah.
here. So just so everyone can understand, there
Yeah.
are so many layers.
Makes sense in my mind, but it's quite different. This is why these podcasts are good, because I can try and get it out in a simple way.
And
Trying to help to frame it. Basically,
So-
put it this way: we're choosing to not repair 1 in 10 potholes
Perfect. Over
Okay.
8 years.
for the next 8 years.
Yes.
So
yes.
for every 10 potholes that appear in the city of Adelaide, for every 10 bricks or foot pavers that come up, we will not repair one of those bricks or one of those potholes or
kind of now
one of those park benches that falls over.
Which kind of now, this council has been pushing administration to do 100% ratio, right?
Well, they've been virtue signaling,
yes.
telling everybody how bad you were.
That's right.
Your administration, like the last Summer Council.
Yes.
And now they realise that balancing the books is actually a little bit difficult.
Than what they thought.
Yeah. And suddenly, after the last 2 years, me going, we're in deep doo-doo right here. We are in real serious trouble. They've finally gone, oh, hold on a second. I think we're in trouble.
Yeah. So on top of all of that, you have to think about that we're spending money on main streets.
This is just renewals. Okay,
Yeah.
so just the renewal budget.
That's just renewals.
Just the renewal deficit
Yes.
is going to be about $150 million.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Now, let's add another complexity here. They're choosing to maintain the streets at 90%. So every 10th pothole won't be maintained. Now, the thing is that they're also bringing forward maintenance on other assets, on the main street assets, which aren't due for renewal for a period of time.
That's right. So they brought forward the renewals on
Yeah.
that particular main street.
Yes.
Not all of them, but several.
I think most of them.
Several of them. Highness Street was due, but there were some of them that weren't due. So they brought them
Yes.
forward, which in turn.
So that's going to cost us $43 million. Okay, now the way to think about this, let's just say we have a business and we buy a printer.
Yeah.
We buy a printer for $1,000 and we expect this printer to last us 10 years. So that printer, every single year we have a capital budget for printing to buy printers of $100 per year. And we're going to say this is our budget. After year 2, let's just imagine we don't like the color anymore.
Yeah.
So we're going to scrap that printer, which has another 8 years to go. We're going to buy a brand new one for $1,000. Our printing budget just went from $100 to $180.
That's right.
Okay, because it had 8 years left to run on
That's
it.
right.
We chucked it out early.
That's a really good way of putting it.
That cost
Yes.
is what the City of Adelaide ratepayers are going to have to foot the bill for. That wasted cost
Yes.
of the value that we're putting in the bin. And everyone's done this, right? Everyone's bought some bit of technology and then figured out there's something better and then we wasted it.
Yeah.
Right? We thought we'd get, or like, a piece of clothing.
Yeah.
We thought we'd get some more wares out of it, but actually
Yeah.
we don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
We've wasted that money
Yeah.
and that's what we're doing with the main streets. That wasted cost is $43 million.
So park that. Okay. So we've got the renewals.
Yes.
We've got the Main Street upgrades.
Okay, so hold on.
Okay, you want to get
So
going?
yeah, no, okay. So here's where the complexity comes in, and I don't think that the council has really understood this point, is that because we've wasted the value of bringing forward the value, right? Mm-hmm. The main streets will be maintained to that 100% level. Mm-hmm. But if overall we're maintaining something at 90%, mm-hmm. that means that other streets mm-hmm. are only going to be maintained to 80% or 70%, which means on the main streets, our policy is going to be no potholes.
This is
on other streets, there's going to be 2 potholes.
Yeah, this is
which averages out to 1 pothole per street.
You mentioned that in the meeting.
Yeah.
Which, I have to admit, I didn't think of it. So let's be fair. I'm not going to be in tune with everything is said. So when you picked that up and you said that in the meeting, you were shut down.
Yes, because it sounds really bad and it's not politically great for the council to basically say, no, we're not just going to maintain our streets to 90%. We're actually maintaining our streets to 80% in some areas and 100% in other areas.
So this is where...
and the cost to do so is a lot more. It's $43 million extra to do that.
So this is what my concern is that you made that point, because I actually remember you making that point. I was listening to you. You got shut down. Then the meeting just went chaos because you couldn't get that point across. It never got answered. Because, when everyone's telling you to shut down, trying to shut you down,
there's
creating the drama, points of order,
saying I'm a misogynist or something,
whatever.
Because we're not going to maintain streets
doing
correctly.
the little bit of theatre that elected members do. This is a really important point.
It is
that we didn't actually get to have a deep dive in.
Yeah.
And even though this is as the start of our draft, it is there's an opportunity to hopefully we can get down on that discussion with administration.
Yeah, and maybe a good example is to say, let's just say we have 2 houses and they require $100 of maintenance each year.
Yeah.
We only have, we don't have $200 to pay for it. We only have $180. Okay. A 90% renewal rate would be spending $90 on each house. But we're not doing that. What we're choosing to do is spend $100 on one house and $80 on the other house, because our budget is being cut. And we're going to spend it on the main streets, which means that your local streets, your local roads, anything that's not a main street will degrade at a much faster rate. The problem with this is that it will work. Politically, it will work. No one will get angry about this because it is extremely difficult for me to explain this in a short amount of time. And it's going to take a number of years before people realize that their streets aren't getting maintained.
And this is it's going to be the problem, not in the short term, in the next next council or the council after that are going to turn around and say, what was the two councils thinking during that time when they set that long-term financial plan?
That's right.
So somewhere along the line, someone's always going to pay for it, aren't they?
Yeah. Now, renewals are like replacing the asset.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they can't now not maintain it, right? So the thing is that once things reach the end of their life, they get more and more expensive to maintain. So the cost of maintenance goes up. Same thing with, like, say, a computer. Yeah. If you have a new computer, you have no issues.
That's right.
But my mum has this ancient laptop thing and it doesn't really work. Now, instead of just buying a new computer, she has to go to the repair person and fix it.
Yeah.
Like an old car. Probably that's a good example, right?
Yeah.
Old cars are more expensive to run than a new car.
Yeah.
So servicing a new car is very cheap.
Yeah.
There's no problems with it. An old car, for my Volkswagen, I had to do a $6,000 engine rebuild.
Yeah.
I bought the car for $6,000, right? That's what we're now getting into, is we've got these degraded old assets which are fundamentally not fit for purpose anymore, and now the maintenance cost becomes ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the ratepayers are going to have to pay for that additional maintenance cost and then also not get the new asset.
Can we move on?
That's renewals.
Okay.
Yes.
Renewals, main streets, intertwined because
so key thing to remember, that to properly do it, 10.5% rate increase. My view on this, go out to the people and say, people of Adelaide, we can't properly maintain our assets. Do you want us to spend on the nice to haves climate change, heritage, advertising, Lord Mayor's office, nice Instagram videos. Do you want us to properly maintain our assets? Or do you want us to raise rates? And which levels of all these three things? People might love the Lord Mayor's Instagram, right? So they want to keep a little bit of that, but let's cut that down to a third. Let's increase our rates and a little bit, and let's increase our thing. We need to go out to them with that proposition. But at the moment, we're going to keep that all under wraps and not tell anybody how bad the future situation is going to be.
And how bad it's going to get, because there are other things that are coming into the equation in all of this. The other things that we have to think about is because of all this spending that we're doing, the weir and the bridge was removed from the long-term financial plan. Yes, well, they have.
Rundle U Park was removed.
No. In this discussion that we're having in regards to the long-term financial plan.
Oh, they're making an assumption that someone else is going to pay for it.
No. So what they've done, they've put a line in there saying that in this discussion, our advice is to isolate the weir and the bridge.
Yes, I understand
right?
that.
Let's talk about it. Let's call the word. I call it removal, but let's call it isolate.
If you don't know, the bridge and the weir are going to reach their end of their life in the next few years. So that's probably the end of the 20s.
So the bridge at the moment, it needs about $60 million. Is that right? And the weir, is that about the same?
I think it's 40.
Okay. So these two items.
That's the opposite. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Either way, big money. So these two items need to obviously be planned for when we're going to fix them. So they're going to be seeking, as we've done every single year since 2018, seeking the state government to help support the funding of these two items, state and federal. Yeah, cool, that's great. The state government have already said if they are,
Tom Coutson-Tonis was on radio.
Yes, with you, wasn't he?
He was with me.
So he said on radio that if the bridge requires maintenance, then it's the council's problem. But if they require the bridge for another purpose, they may look at the option.
Okay, so
and
here's
that
where I'm a bit
means if we
conflicted.
want to put a tram down the line, maybe we might think about helping out the city of Adelaide.
See, the thing is, these renewals. Okay, look, I'm a bit conflicted here because I want the state government to pay for it, but the reality is that we knew that we needed to fix these assets. In your budget, in the last council's budget, you had planned to fix it.
Yes.
In this budget, they're massively in debt.
Yeah.
They've assumed that they were going to have to pay $100 million to fix these two things, the weir and the bridge. So the issue is that the Adelaide City Council has known forever that it needed to renew these two assets, and we've had reports from a long back. Now it's the discretionary spending of this council that has now meant, and the increase of costs has now meant that it can't afford to do that anymore. And so we now need to go to a cap in hand to the state government and say, can you please pay for these two items? And
then on top of that, we've got the Rundle U Park.
Yeah.
So the Rundle U Park was removed from the long-term financial plan last term of council. Okay, that's a separate issue. Yeah, but they want to. If you bring that back into the long-term financial plan, it's going to change a lot of things.
Yes, it will. Let's talk about that in a second. Okay. But just coming back to the bridge and the weir, the initial cost for council, the expected cost is $100 million.
Yeah.
Right now, we need to go to the state government and say, you need to pay for this and agree to pay for this percent. It's going to be, we'll pay for most of the bridge, but you have to pay for most of the weir and the federal government. We need them to commit right now because if they don't, we need to raise the funds or we shut down the bridge or we drain the torrens. So we need to decide, state government, federal government, are you going to contribute 2/3 of the cost of the bridge and the wedge, bridge and the weir, or are we draining the torrens and we're shutting the bridge? Okay. We need to know right now, at this point in time, what's going to happen there, because we've either got to charge our ratepayers more or not.
Yeah.
Because the prudential borrowing limit of the council is $153 million. We run out of our credit card. We have no more capacity to spend in the 28-29 financial year. The bridge and the weir come after that. So if we are going to have the money in order to borrow to build these two things, we need $100 million in equity, in borrowing capacity in that year. And we run out of money in 28-29 28-29 financial year. So that means that we need to raise rates right now to ensure that we have enough capacity. That's the biggest problem here.
And that's what you've been going on about since the moment that we started doing the budget our first budget 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You kept on telling everybody that we are not sustainable if we don't stop our spending in certain areas, or if you still want to continue doing that spending on feel good stuff, or whatever you want to call it, or worthy stuff, or whatever it is in that pile of over here, you're going to have to increase the rates.
That's right.
And what you're saying is that the City of Adelaide, the ratepayers of the City of Adelaide, should have a choice on which way this budget should be managed, or which way a long-term financial plan should be managed. But the problem is that it's really complex and very difficult and very boring to understand. But when you're a ratepayer, and as I am, I live in the city, I own a house, we have businesses, I'm very heavily invested in the City of Adelaide. I am concerned. I'm actually worried. Whereas a lot of people in this council might come and go, they might be elected members now, they might go off and work for state government, they might get a job as an executive somewhere. I am here as a person that is committed to the city. And I thank you, Henry, for pointing out a lot of things which are really concerning, even though quite boring, even though quite...
Yeah, well, I'm a tax lawyer. So
that's right.
I love this. I'm aware of this.
Yeah, it is.
And you know what? You don't have to be good at everything. At least let me help and kind of deal with these things.
Well, at least answer your questions.
Oh, exactly right. Now, even worse than that is last year when we adopted our long-term financial plan, the council was assuming $208 million of borrowings. Then in May this year, which is everyone's calling me a liar for, there was a report, go look it up, 21st of May, 2024, they then expected our borrowings to go to $315 million.
Yeah, they did.
When I said, where did an extra $107 million of borrowings were? We're going to go into debt by an extra 50%. Oh, you can't ask that. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Oh, it's just a draft. It's just this. I'm like, I don't care. These are the best assumptions we have. And then I got the answer to the question of where did an extra $107 million coming from?
Where?
It came from new and upgrades in future years, right? That was $90 million. Main Street upgrades, an extra $60 million. Increase to the capital program above the additional cost of $36 million. The aquatic centre, the Rundle U Park income goes back in, and then interest and borrowings and the cost of doing these things is $40 million of interest.
Wow.
So that's where an extra $107 million of debt comes from.
Wow.
And they're going, no, you're a liar. And they're just assumptions. And I remember Mark Siebentritt saying, because he has no idea what's going on, he's saying, now we have 2 good years of financials and then 8 years of bad data. No, that's the best guess we've got. The administration is making really good assumptions about what our debt position is going to look like, but it's going to look worse. It's not going to get better.
No.
Like, when have you ever gone out for a house renovation and it come in on time and under budget? It doesn't
renovating
happen.
a house at the moment, I can tell you, absolutely, it is, just put on for the extra 40% to what you think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never comes out to where you think.
Same thing with a lawyer, to be honest with you. I try and get my proposals correct. You know who's been great? Our producer, Grant. He's just been on time, on budget. What a guy. What a guy. Big shout out to him. The only person in the current market who's on time and under budget.
Thank you. Thanks, Henry. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to go through?
Yeah.
We've talked about the long-term financial plan in a nutshell. It is a draft.
There's 3 things that I want to talk about, really. Okay. So there's kind of break it down. There's 3 issues that are contributing to our major debt position. 1, renewals. 2, Main Street upgrades. And 3, the bridge and the weir.
Yeah.
So the Main Street, renewal cost, 10.5% rate increase to deal with that. Main Street upgrades, I think it's around 10% to deal with the added cost of the Main Street upgrades, 10% rate increase. And then an 8.8% increase as a result of the bridge and the weir.
So what's the total?
Okay. The total is 27.3% rate increase in this year.
To cover all that.
To make sure that we have money in 10 years' time.
That's not possible.
Right?
That's not possible to the average ratepayer.
So we got to cut something. And this is why I think people are struggling with it, is